The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Wyoming for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Birthright citizenship allows for predatory birth tourism practices in which foreign-born women come to the United States on tourist visas to give birth so that their children become U.S. citizens. Once the children turn 21, they can sponsor their parents to become legal U.S. residents so the family can immigrate to America. Concerningly, the majority of these birth tourists come from one of America's greatest adversaries, including China. Because of advances in technology, lax surrogacy laws, and the incorrect understanding of the 14th Amendment, countries are now using international surrogacy programs to rent wombs in America. Mr. O'Brien, there is a back and forth in U.S. policy regarding scrutiny and restrictions for birth tourism, including 2 different policies issued in 2015 and 2020. Where does our federal policy currently stand on this issue, and is it strong enough to prevent this practice of essentially renting wombs for surrogacy to have anchor babies?
Well, the fact is that we don't have any policy specifically on this. We have the immigration laws, but as we've seen with the last administration, if the government refuses to enforce those, they have no effect whatsoever. And there's anywhere from 125,000 to 300,000, depending upon whose estimates you're looking at, incidences of birth tourism each year. The implications of this are absolutely frightening if you look at it long term. During the Cold War, the Russians had a program called the Illegals Program, where they inserted agents of influence and spies into the United States with documents that made it appear that they were lawfully here. If those people had children, they became U.S. citizens, and regularly those children were trained, despite the fact that they allegedly had a claim to United States citizenship, they were trained to be against the interests of the United States. So this is something that is dangerous. We need a firm policy against it. And it is something that places the United States at a great deficit in terms of national security.
Well, and I want to focus specifically on this issue. According to the Heritage Foundation, they have reported on a new birth tourism tactic which uses international commercial surrogacy to exploit America's misinterpretation of the 14th Amendment and our lax surrogacy laws. Intended parents who are foreign nationals use a surrogate in or transported to the United States, and the surrogate may be an American woman who then gestates a child for a fee, allowing foreign nationals to essentially rent a room or buy a baby. Mr. O'Brien, under the current wrongful interpretation of the 14th Amendment, this child would gain U.S. citizenship, wouldn't they?
Yes, they would, and because the Immigration and Nationality Act has become a muddle under the weight of misinterpretations about various effects of provisions of the Act, that places the United States in a position where people with no connection to the United States who simply want to be here because they either don't like the political or economic conditions in their home country can then use the citizenship of an adopted child or a surrogate child to try and access the United States and then eventually get lawful permanent residence and become citizens themselves.
So this form of birth tourism actually exacerbates the crisis we have with birth citizenship, requiring direct and exclusive allegiance, which should require direct and exclusive allegiance to the United States. Don't you agree?
Yes, it does. It exacerbates it significantly.
Well, what's very interesting is China banned international surrogacy, yet the international industry is disproportionately fueled by Chinese nationals who make up 41.7% of this surrogacy industry. Should this raise national security concerns that China is aggressively participating in a practice that it has banned in its own country?
Yes, China has an established pattern through an organization called the People's Work Bureau of approaching people who have a familial connection to China, regardless of their citizenship, and then pressuring them based on connections to Chinese family members who are still within the PRC to provide intelligence information, whether that be national security information or economic espionage information.
Well, and what's interesting is that these children who are receiving American citizenship, they receive that even if the parents intend to raise them abroad. What are the benefits of having a child with American citizenship?
Well, the benefits of having a child with U.S. citizenship is that child can later sponsor you for lawful permanent residence. It also makes the child eligible for all sorts of things that come along with U.S. citizenship, which is entering and leaving the United States. The implications of that from a national security or criminal perspective are enormous. So this is truly frightening. And it's shocking to me that there is so much debate about this. I think if we're arguing about this, we've sort of lost the concept of what citizenship is and what it means.
Amen. I think you make a very good point. I ask unanimous consent to put into the record an article from July 15, 2024, entitled "The New Face of Birth Tourism, Chinese Nationals, American Surrogates, and Birthright Citizenship." And with that, I yield.
Without objection.